I will survive. I will survive. Hopefully. About things about how and why people at the National Institutes of Health were let go because they were on a quote probationary period. Now, that word, it makes sense that you would think that means they did something wrong, that they're in trouble, anything like that. There are a limited number of federal employees at all times. So, a big part of those budgets and things that they talk about determine how many people work as federal employees at these agencies. Getting a spot on one of those jobs is very hard. And it's one of those things that it used to be considered one of the most stable jobs because once you get into one of those positions, you have federal experience, which is like pretty unique on its own. And so those are going to be people stay in those positions for a long time. And so when someone gets one, it's not necessarily just like, oh, you did really well, we think you're good in this job, we can just give you a federal position. The first thing, the jobs are hard to come by, the turnover is very slow. That part is one of those things that's like, okay, well, the government is inefficient in some ways, and that's one of the ways, especially if you're not already working as a contractor or something like that. The thing that happens with any large organization, government or not, is they hire out contractors, but essentially they fill the gaps in what like the workforce with contractors a long time, but they are notoriously fickle even before this particular hellscape started. So you have to kind of have an in, and not necessarily because of like any nepo crap or any of that, but there's just like procedures involved in going and working that are very unique, and so it's hard to know how to break through those things. Okay, so if you're someone who gets a federal position, you are probably going to be in that position for a long time. So one of the things that you do is everyone who gets a position or changes a position, which is an important thing to know because there are people who were on probationary periods just because they were promoted or decided to work at like a different institute at the National Institutes of Health. I can't speak so much to other agencies, but because I've never worked at other agencies, but at least with the NIH, who is being extremely targeted right now, I did kind of want to explain it. So then people have, you finally get a job, but you have to have like a bunch of records of your work. You have to pass assessments, which are like your direct supervisor to them, and then the director, and kind of up the chain to ensure that people are doing work and doing work well. If you're on a probationary period, most likely it just means that you switch from a contracting position to a federal one. People who have been working, as contractors for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years at places like NIH, and because they changed. They were put on a quote probationary period, which is the language that is used and has been used. I have the jobs. I knew it was bullshit because they didn't know what a probationary period was. I have friends, former colleagues that have been working there, like I said, for many years, who just, something that should have been a federal position, dedicating themselves to those jobs because, like I said, once you're in them, you don't usually get out of them. It was turned into this terrible thing in trauma, so much unnecessary pain. And so they lost those jobs, were in administrative or training positions, on scholarship programs that have been around for, 20, 30 years that are actually congressionally funded, meaning they had no right to do that, and they knew that. So even the ones we thought would be safe were not, because they were like, yeah, we're not canceling the program. But if you fire all the people that run the program or that need to be there to run the program, you've essentially just ended the program. I did not think about it. On doing my makeup, and I chose eyeliner to pick myself up. But okay, so now that was the people that I knew in like the federal training programs and administration and stuff like that. When you get into labs and things, it becomes way more complicated because like there's a reason that those labs are at the NIH, and it's because it's high caliber research that requires not only money but equipment and people. These are the places where are developed. We learn about like the first valves, like for people who have heart failure and other things like. And they actually have exhibits and things that show like the whole progression of those. So you get into labs and stuff, and people have been to do science at all. It takes so much time to learn those skills, whether it's the technical skill or the critical thinking. That's even if you're not going to get a medical degree, it takes at least 4 years of college, probably 4 years ish graduate school. Then you have to do a postdoc, which most people don't know about either, and none of these things pay well at all. They've spent at least 20 years of getting to where they are. Then add the fact that these are literally the experts on things like rare diseases and cancers and everything from diabetes to like rare brain disorders. Like these are very high caliber labs that are very highly planned. The thing about asking for proof that is so infuriating is that anytime someone has a freaking budget or anybody has a grant, they've spent so much time collecting evidence. It's also all readily available. It's not like it's hard to find. Elon Musk might know that if he finished graduate school, but he didn't. They have proof. Look at the publications. Look at the peer review proposals, even the ones they didn't get. Look at the posters. Look at the pages of people. Look at the documents. Look at the just like the records are so obvious and available. It is infuriating. So these are not, jobs you can just replace someone quickly. And like even if you can to a certain degree, you still have to train them. And so if you're taking out people out of the equation that are the ones training them, like the office that I used to work in, or even just postdocs, PIs, whatever, it's not something that you just stall and go back to. Like, depending on the research that you're doing. When I worked in a lab, I had to be in lab every single day, and I'm talking 365 days a year for the project that I was working on because I work with cells that require data. If you just like interrupt that, like, what that means that's how much money is wasted, like just abruptly having to stop experiment. People say, well, they could go and do the stuff. Like, there were scientists trying to work for free. They had police at the gates when people tried to go. And they didn't even know, they were just trying to return their equipment, which I don't even want to get into how fucking dangerous that is to have all of that government equipment to not only people, but people that are probably very upset because you literally just laid them off from, their life's work. And so you have that aspect of it. There's so much money wasted there. Not to mention the stress and quality of work is bound to go down because there's less people doing the thing. They have less resources. And so it's like very insidious in that people, you ask them for proof that they have, but then you pretend like they don't have that proof. And then you fire people needed to gather the evidence and to do those experiments that they need to prove it. And then taking away the things they need to do that. So you are very much gaslighting and being like, yeah, show me you can carry the water bucket up the hill, and then like freeze attack on women's research, like people studying women's health, which we finally started doing, and now they are taking it away again. In my personal opinion, I think that it's all just petty because Trump is pissed about the way he was portrayed, aka realistic COVID, and during COVID. Even during COVID, we had restrictions on good use. Anything about diversity, anything about race, they were trying to get rid of it. And so, yeah, we knew this was happening, and then people won't listen to it, taking away the whistle. Absolutely infuriating. I have a lot of information and knowledge that I would like to share with the world, particularly here. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is what they're doing is bullshit. They are scaring complying. They are promising severance that doesn't exist. That you see how much effort they're putting into the treasury and all of that. You think they're just going to give people. It's also technically illegal in a lot of ways because some of the people, given positions, they're like elected people. But that's a whole, it's on other beast, but that's a whole other aspect. But if you want to know more about how some of these things in the background work, how the grants and the science works, I'm here for that. I don't know how Bailey tells whole entire fucking stories, and that's crazy. I'm also blind, and so like even to do this.